Picture this. It's 1998, and a Tennessee farmer walks into a McDonald's in Clarksville with 5 empty 55-gallon drums, asking for their used fry oil. The manager thinks he's insane. Corporate threatens to call the cops, but he signs a waiver anyway. Within 6 months, this guy is running his $30,000 John Deere tractor on literal McDonald's grease, saving $12,000 a year in fuel costs, and making John Deere's legal department so furious they'll try everything to shut him down for fuel system contamination. The setup: Tennessee farm crisis, 1998. Let me set the scene for you. 1998 was a brutal year for American farmers. Diesel fuel had jumped from 80 cents a gallon in '96 to $1.40 by late '98. That doesn't sound like much until you realize a modern farm operation burns through hundreds, sometimes thousands of gallons per week. Your fuel bill could easily hit $30,000, $40,000 a year. For a small family farm, that was the difference between profit and bankruptcy. Montgomery County, Tennessee was particularly hard hit. This is rolling tobacco and soybean country about 50 miles northwest of Nashville. These weren't massive corporate operations. These were 300, 500-acre family farms that had been passed down for generations. The kind of places where Grandpa's 1952 farmall still lived in the back barn because you never know when you might need it. Diesel prices were squeezing everyone. The big agricultural companies, John Deere, Case, New Holland, they were all pushing farmers toward newer, bigger, more expensive equipment. The sales pitch was always about efficiency. This new tractor uses 20% less fuel. Never mind that the tractor costs $150,000. You'll save money in the long run, they said. Farmers weren't stupid. They could do math. Most of them were running equipment from the 80s and 90s, trying to squeeze every last mile out of machines that should have been retired years ago. They were doing their own repairs, fabricating parts in their shops, doing anything to avoid taking on more debt. Because here's the thing about farming nobody talks about. You can do everything right and still lose money because fuel prices jumped, or the harvest was late, or the market dropped. This is the world Harold Bates lived in. Harold Bates and his impossible problem. Harold Bates was nobody special. And I mean that as the highest compliment. He was a third-generation tobacco and soybean farmer, working 500 acres outside Clarksville. High school education, Navy veteran, been farming since he got out in 1972. He drove a beat-up Ford F-250 with 300,000 miles on it. He wore the same Carhartt jacket for 15 years. He fixed everything himself because paying a mechanic was admitting defeat. Harold's main tractor was a 1994 John Deere 7750, a 170 horsepower row crop tractor with a 6-cylinder turbocharged diesel. Decent machine, reliable, nothing fancy. He'd bought it used in '96 for $32,000, which was still more debt than he wanted. The 7750 had one major problem. It was thirsty. Pulling a disc or running the hay baler, Harold was burning 8 to 10 gallons of diesel per hour. During planting and harvest season, he'd easily go through 200 gallons a week. At $1.40 per gallon, that's $280 a week, over $14,000 a year just in tractor fuel. Harold kept detailed records because that's what farmers do. He had notebooks going back decades tracking every expense, every yield, every hour of equipment use. In late 1997, he calculated that fuel costs were eating 40% of his profit margin. 40%. Think about that for a second. Nearly half his profit was going into his fuel tank. He tried everything conventional wisdom suggested, adjusted tire pressure, kept the engine meticulously maintained, planned field work to minimize trips. Nothing helped enough. The fundamental problem remained. Diesel cost $1.40 a gallon and going up, and he needed thousands of gallons to farm. John Deere's solution? Buy a newer, more efficient tractor. Harold ran the numbers. A new equivalent tractor would cost him $80,000 after trade-in. Even if it used 20% less fuel, he'd save maybe $3,000 a year. It would take him 27 years to break even. He'd be 93 years old. That math didn't work. Harold needed a different solution. He needed it to be cheap, really cheap, and he needed it to work with the equipment he already had. What he needed, essentially, was impossible, which is usually when farmers start getting creative. The diesel engine revelation. Harold had a habit of reading everything: farm journals, mechanics magazines, random technical manuals. His wife Mary complained that their bathroom had more reading material than the county library. One night in January of 1998, he was flipping through an old issue of Mother Earth News from 1983. There was an article about a guy in California who'd converted his Mercedes diesel to run on vegetable oil. The article was pretty basic. Rudolf Diesel's original engine from the 1890s had actually run on peanut oil. Diesel fuel came later because it was cheaper. But technically, a diesel engine could run on any oil with the right properties: vegetable oil, animal fat, even used cooking oil from restaurants. The main challenges were viscosity and filtration. Harold read that article 3 times. Then he went out to his shop and stared at his tractor for about an hour. The 7750 had a simple fuel system by modern standards. A fuel tank, a mechanical lift pump, a filter, an injection pump, and 6 injectors. All mechanical. No computers, no sensors, just precision machine metal-moving diesel from tank to cylinder. Here's what Harold understood that most people didn't. Farmers are basically chemists who wear boots. You spend your life mixing fertilizers, understanding soil composition, calculating spray rates. You understand viscosity because you've seen diesel gel up in winter and thin out in summer. Harold knew that if you heated vegetable oil to about 160 degrees Fahrenheit, it would thin out to roughly the same viscosity as number 2 diesel fuel. The theory was simple. Start the engine on regular diesel to get it warm. Once it's at operating temperature, switch over to heated vegetable oil. Before you shut down, switch back to diesel to purge the vegetable oil from the system. That way, you're starting and stopping on diesel, using vegetable oil only when the engine's hot. Simple in theory. But where do you get cheap vegetable oil? Virgin vegetable oil from the grocery store cost more than diesel. You needed a source of free or nearly free oil, lots of it, hundreds of gallons per year. Harold thought about this for exactly 1 day before the answer hit him like lightning. McDonald's. The McDonald's gold mine. Every McDonald's in America generates waste vegetable oil, lots of it. They're frying thousands of pounds of fries, chicken nuggets, and fish sandwiches every day. That oil eventually breaks down and has to be replaced. Most restaurants were paying someone to haul it away. Paying to remove something that could run a diesel engine. Harold drove to the McDonald's on Wilma Rudolph Boulevard in Clarksville. He walked in during the breakfast lull and asked to speak to the manager. Her name was Denise, and she thought he was completely insane. "You want our used fryer oil?" "Sir, we have a contract with a rendering company. They pick it up every 2 weeks. "How much do they pay you?" Harold asked. Denise laughed. "Pay us? We pay them. $80 a month to haul it away." Harold made his pitch. "I'll take it for free. I'll pick it up as often as you need. You save almost $1,000 a year. All I need is for you to not throw it away." Denise made a phone call, then another. 45 minutes later, she came back. "Corporate says you can take it, but you have to sign a waiver saying you won't sue us if you poison yourself or blow up your farm." Harold signed without reading it. He'd just secured a supply of hundreds of gallons of free fuel. The next problem was collection and storage. Used fryer oil is disgusting. It's thick, brown, smells like everything that's ever been cooked in it, and it's full of food particles. Harold needed drums, lots of them. He found a guy selling used 55-gallon plastic drums for $10 each. He bought 10 of them. He built a simple wooden rack in his pickup bed to hold 4 drums at a time. The oil was unusable as fuel in its current state. It was full of water, carbon particles, food debris, salt, sugar. Harold needed to clean it cheap. He developed a filtration system that was agricultural ingenuity at its finest. First, let the oil settle for a week. All the heavy particles and most of the water would sink to the bottom. Carefully pump the top 3/4 into a fresh drum. Then pass the oil through paint strainer bags, the kind you buy at hardware stores for $5. Finally, pass it through a 10-micron fuel filter. The result was clean, Amber-colored vegetable oil that looked like it came straight from the grocery store. The whole filtration setup cost him less than $100. By March of '98, he had 200 gallons of filtered fryer oil ready to go. Now he just needed to make his tractor use it. Building the Franken system. Here's where Harold's Navy training and 30 years of farm repairs paid off. The challenge was heat and switching. The vegetable oil needed to be heated to about 160 degrees before it would flow like diesel. The system needed to start on diesel, switch to oil when warm, and switch back to diesel before shutdown. Harold's solution was beautifully simple. He bought a second fuel tank, a 30-gallon marine diesel tank from Tractor Supply for $120. He mounted it on the tractor's frame next to the original diesel tank. For heating, he fabricated a heat exchanger from copper tubing. It was basically a coil of half-inch copper pipe that sat in the oil tank. He plumbed this coil into the tractor's coolant system using T-fittings and heater hose. Hot coolant from the engine would flow through the coil, warming the oil. The parts cost him $40 at the hardware store. For switching between tanks, he used a simple ball valve from the plumbing section at Home Depot. 3/4-inch brass, $12. He mounted it where he could reach it from the tractor seat. One position pulled from the diesel tank, the other from the oil tank. He solved the return line challenge with a second ball valve. The whole conversion system looked absolutely homemade because it was. Exposed copper tubing, ball valves with plastic handles, hose clamps everywhere. It looked like something you'd build in an apocalypse scenario using parts from a hardware store, because that's exactly what it was. Total cost for the conversion? $215. Harold had no idea if it would work. The stakes were high. If this went wrong, he could destroy his $32,000 tractor's fuel system. New injection pump, $1,200. 6 new injectors, $900. He'd be out over $2,000 plus labor, but if it worked, he'd be running his tractor on oil that cost him basically nothing. The potential upside vastly outweighed the risk. His neighbor Bill said he was going to blow up the tractor. His John Deere dealer told him his warranty would be void immediately if he modified the fuel system. Harold didn't care. On March 23, 1998, he was ready for the first test. First fire up and the smell test. Harold got up at 5 a.m. even though he didn't need to. He was too nervous to sleep. He'd spent the previous day triple-checking every connection, every hose clamp, every valve. He climbed into the 7750 and turned the key. The big diesel fired immediately, settling into its normal rough idle. So far, so good. Nothing had blown up. Harold let it idle for 10 minutes, watching the coolant temperature gauge climb. When it hit 160 degrees, he reached down and switched the fuel valve from diesel to vegetable oil. The engine stumbled slightly, then smoothed out. That was it. No explosion, no smoke, no dying. It just kept running. Harold sat there for 5 minutes, waiting for something to go wrong. Nothing did. He put the tractor in gear and drove it around his yard. Normal power, normal response, normal everything. The only difference was the smell. When you burn vegetable oil that used to fry chicken and French fries, it smells like a fast food restaurant. His exhaust smelled like McDonald's. It was weirdly appetizing. Harold ran the tractor for 2 hours that morning. Everything worked perfectly. When he finally shut it down, he made sure to run it on diesel for the last 5 minutes to purge the vegetable oil from the injection system. The tractor sat there ticking as it cooled, smelling like French fries, having just proved that a 50-year-old diesel technology could run on waste oil with $200 worth of hardware store parts. Over the next month, Harold put 100 hours on the tractor running exclusively on French fry oil, except for starting and stopping. He pulled a disc, ran a planter, baled hay, did every heavy load he could think of. The tractor performed flawlessly. He did the math on his consumption. The tractor was using the same amount of vegetable oil as it had used diesel, about 8 gallons per hour under load. But the vegetable oil was free. His fuel cost had dropped from $14,000 a year to about $300 a year. That's not a typo. He was saving over $13,000 annually. Let that sink in for a minute. $13,000. For a small farmer, that was the difference between staying in business and foreclosure. That was security. Harold kept quiet about it for exactly 2 days before his neighbor Bill noticed the smell. Word spreads. John Deere loses their mind. Bill Walker farmed the property adjacent to Harold's place. They'd known each other for 40 years. Bill walked over one afternoon while Harold was disking and immediately noticed the smell. "Is your tractor burning? Why does it smell like KFC?" Harold explained the whole setup. Bill thought he was joking. He wasn't. "That's vegetable oil. From McDonald's. It's free. I'm running my entire operation on French fry grease." Bill wanted the conversion on his tractor immediately. Harold helped him install it the following weekend. By June, 6 farmers in Montgomery County were running modified tractors. Harold had become the unofficial expert. He'd help anyone who asked, spending his Sundays installing conversion systems. He didn't charge because that's not how rural communities work. The local Clarksville newspaper ran a story in July. "Local farmers running tractors on McDonald's grease." The article mentioned John Deere tractors by name, described the conversion process, and quoted Harold saying it worked better than regular diesel in hot weather. That article made its way to John Deere corporate somehow. Within 2 weeks, Harold got a certified letter from Deere & Company's legal department. "You have modified your tractor's fuel system in a manner not approved by John Deere. This modification voids all remaining warranty coverage. Furthermore, we cannot recommend or support the use of non-approved fuels in John Deere equipment." Harold's warranty had already expired, so that threat was meaningless, but the letter pissed him off. John Deere was basically saying, "Don't you dare try to save money using fuel we didn't sell you." The local dealers started refusing service on any tractor with visible fuel system modifications. These farmers had been loyal customers for decades, and now they were being frozen out because they'd found a way to afford to farm. Here's what John Deere didn't understand. Farmers are some of the most mechanically skilled people on the planet. They fix million-dollar combines in the field using duct tape and prayers. Telling a farmer they can't modify their own equipment is like telling a chef they can't modify their own recipes. It's fundamentally insulting. The dealer's refusal backfired spectacularly. Farmers just started doing all their own service. They bought service manuals. They ordered parts online. John Deere lost service revenue, parts revenue, and goodwill, all because they were afraid of farmers running on vegetable oil instead of diesel. Harold became a minor celebrity in agricultural circles. He got calls from farmers in Kentucky, Arkansas, Mississippi, all wanting to know how to convert their equipment. He started writing up instructions, hand-drawn diagrams showing the heat exchanger design. He'd mail these to people for free, photocopied at the local library. By late 1998, there were probably 50 tractors in Tennessee alone running on waste vegetable oil, and they all had one thing in common. They were John Deere tractors. Not because John Deere was better, but because John Deere had the most mechanical fuel injection systems that were easiest to convert. The irony was delicious. The technical magic nobody talks about. Here's what made Harold's system brilliant. It solved the right problems in the right order using the simplest possible solutions. Problem 1 was viscosity. Vegetable oil at room temperature is about 10 times thicker than diesel fuel. The solution is heat. At 160 degrees, vegetable oil has almost exactly the same viscosity as number 2 diesel at 60 degrees. Harold's heat exchanger using engine coolant was perfect because it was self-regulating. As the engine warmed up, the oil warmed up. It was a passive system with no controls needed. Problem 2 was switching. Harold's dual tank system with manual valves solved this perfectly. Start on diesel, switch to oil when warm, switch back to diesel before shutdown. Total cost, $24 for 2 brass valves. Modern conversion kits with electric solenoids and controllers cost over $2,000 to do exactly the same thing. Problem 3 was filtration. Harold's settle and filter method was time-consuming but effective. The settling removed 90% of contaminants. The paint strainers caught particles down to 50 microns. The final fuel filter caught everything down to 10 microns. The whole system had no computer, no sensors, no complex controls. It was entirely mechanical and entirely passive except for manually switching valves. This meant there was almost nothing to break. The heat exchanger was copper tubing. The valves were brass. The only wear items were the fuel filters, which Harold changed every 50 hours. Modern biodiesel production involves chemical processes converting vegetable oil. It requires methanol, sodium hydroxide, heating, mixing, settling, washing, drying. Harold completely bypassed all of this by simply heating the oil and using mechanical injection. His engine was doing the conversion in the combustion chamber at the moment of burning. It was elegant in its simplicity. The neighbor rebellion begins. By 1999, the movement had taken on a life of its own. Farmers across Middle Tennessee were converting tractors, and the concept was spreading to other states. Someone had started a website with forums where farmers shared tips and troubleshooting advice. The economics were undeniable. Initial conversion cost, $150 to $300. Annual fuel savings for an average farm operation, $10,000 to $15,000. Payback period, about 2 weeks of operation. After that, pure savings. For farmers operating on razor-thin margins, this was transformative. Some John Deere dealers quietly started helping. The parts manager at the Clarksville dealership would accidentally show farmers where to find fuel system parts and wink knowingly. He couldn't officially help with conversions, but he could make sure farmers got the right fuel filters. Harold started noticing other benefits beyond fuel costs. The vegetable oil seemed to lubricate the fuel system better than diesel. Injection pumps were lasting longer. The tractors also ran slightly smoother on vegetable oil at high temperatures. There were challenges. Winter operation was problematic. When temperatures dropped below 40 degrees, even heated vegetable oil started getting thick. The solution was blending. Mix 70% vegetable oil with 30% diesel in cold weather. You still saved money. The fast food chains noticed their waste oil was becoming valuable. Some restaurants started charging farmers for it. Even at 50 cents a gallon, it was still 3 times cheaper than diesel. A market was emerging for something that had previously been garbage. By 2000, the movement had expanded beyond just tractors. Farmers were converting irrigation pumps, grain dryers, backup generators, anything with a diesel engine. Some were converting their pickup trucks. The collective savings were staggering. If you conservatively estimate that 500 farmers across Tennessee were each saving $10,000 a year, that's $5 million staying in farmers' pockets instead of going to fuel companies. That's real economic impact for rural communities. John Deere's legal assault. In December of 2000, John Deere escalated. They sent cease and desist letters to several farmers who were helping others install conversion systems. The letters claimed that modifying John Deere tractors and then helping others do the same constituted unauthorized modification of proprietary systems. It was legal intimidation, pure and simple. John Deere knew they had no real case. Farmers have every legal right to modify equipment they own, but John Deere was betting that farmers couldn't afford lawyers to fight back. They bet wrong. The Tennessee Farm Bureau got involved. They had lawyers. They issued a public statement defending farmers' right to modify their equipment and specifically calling out John Deere. The negative publicity was bad enough that John Deere quietly withdrew the cease and desist letters, but the damage was done to John Deere's reputation. John Deere, the company that had built its brand on supporting farmers, was now seen as attacking farmers for trying to survive. Sales of new John Deere equipment in Tennessee dropped noticeably in 2001. The irony is that John Deere could have capitalized on this. They could have offered factory conversion kits, marketed them as environmentally friendly and farmer-friendly. Instead, they fought it and created a public relations disaster. The legal fight highlighted a growing tension in agriculture. As equipment became more complex, manufacturers wanted more control over how that equipment was used. The right to repair movement that would become huge in the 2010s started here. Harold's perspective was simple. I bought the tractor, it's mine. John Deere sold it to me. Their job is done. They don't get to tell me how to use my property. 10 years later, the numbers that changed everything by 2008. Harold had been running his 7750 on vegetable oil for 10 years. The tractor had 6,800 hours on it. About 90% of those hours were on vegetable oil. The engine had never been apart. He finally got curious about wear and tear. He pulled all 6 injectors and sent them to a diesel shop for testing. The technician called him back confused. "These injectors are supposed to have 6,800 hours on them? They look like they have maybe 2,000. There's almost no wear. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." The vegetable oil was actually extending his engine's life. The better lubrication, the cleaner burn, everything was reducing wear. Harold estimated his engine would go 10,000 hours before needing a rebuild. A diesel tractor normally needs rebuilding at 6,000 to 7,000 hours. The math over 10 years was staggering. Harold had burned 64,000 gallons of vegetable oil. If he'd bought diesel at an average of $2 per gallon, he would have spent $128,000 on fuel. His actual cost? About $3,000 in diesel for starting and stopping. He'd saved $125,000. That's generational wealth for a small farmer. Harold had been able to pay off his farm, buy new equipment with cash, and set aside money for retirement, all because he'd figured out how to run his tractor on French fry grease. His neighbors had similar stories. Bill Walker had saved enough money to send his daughter to college without loans. Another farmer had expanded his operation by 200 acres. The vegetable oil conversion hadn't just saved these farms, it had transformed them. By 2008, commercial biodiesel was becoming available. Problem was, it cost almost as much as regular diesel. Harold's homemade system was still cheaper. He was still filtering oil himself, still running a Frankenstein setup, but it worked, cost almost nothing, and had proven itself reliable over a decade of hard use. What this really means: Harold Bates died in 2021 at age 81. He'd farmed until the day he physically couldn't anymore. His funeral was attended by over 300 people. Multiple eulogies mentioned the vegetable oil tractor. It had become part of his identity, this guy who'd outsmarted John Deere with McDonald's grease. His 7750 is still running. Harold's son kept the farm and the tractor. It's still on vegetable oil. The original conversion system is still there, same copper tubing Harold installed in 1998. The tractor has over 12,000 hours on it now. The story of Harold and his vegetable oil tractor isn't just about clever engineering or saving money. It's about something deeper. It's about self-reliance in an economy that wants you dependent. It's about individuals solving problems that corporations said were unsolvable. John Deere wanted farmers dependent on their dealers, their parts, their approved fuels. Harold said no. He took a wrench, some copper tubing, and 2 brass valves, and he declared independence from the whole system. The vegetable oil tractor became a symbol. It represented the idea that you didn't have to play by their rules. You didn't have to accept high fuel costs and corporate control as inevitable. You could take matters into your own hands. This story should make every corporation nervous, because it proves that sometimes one farmer in Tennessee with a high school education and a good idea can beat a multinational corporation with billions in R&D spending. It proves that simple solutions often work better than complex ones. Harold never got rich off his vegetable oil system. He never patented it, never tried to commercialize it, never sought recognition beyond his community. He just wanted to farm without going bankrupt on fuel costs. The fact that his solution worked so well that it spread across the country was almost accidental. But that's how real innovation works. It doesn't come from corporate boardrooms or billion-dollar R&D facilities. It comes from someone with a problem, some basic knowledge, and the willingness to try something nobody's tried before. It comes from a guy standing in his shop at midnight, thinking, what if I just heated the oil? The legacy of Harold's vegetable oil tractor lives on. Thousands of farmers worldwide run on waste vegetable oil now. The technology has spread to developing countries where fuel costs are even more prohibitive. None of them know his name, but they're all using his idea. Modern John Deere tractors are much harder to convert. They have computer-controlled fuel systems, proprietary software that monitors everything. Modifying them voids warranties and can trigger error codes. This is presented as progress, but it's really control, making sure farmers stay dependent on John Deere for everything. Some farmers are fighting back. There's a growing movement for right-to-repair legislation. Farmers are hacking tractor software, finding workarounds, maintaining independence however they can. It's the same spirit Harold embodied. The fundamental question remains relevant. Who owns your property? If you buy a tractor, is it really yours? can you modify it? Harold's answer was clear. Once he bought that 7750, it was his to do with as he pleased. This story should matter to everyone, not just farmers. The same issues apply to phones, computers, cars, appliances. Manufacturers want control. They want you dependent on their systems. Right to repair isn't just about tractors. It's about owning the things you buy. Harold proved it's possible to push back. With $200 in parts and some determination, he beat a system designed to keep him dependent. He saved enough money to keep farming when others were going under. He helped his neighbors do the same. The vegetable oil tractor's still out there, still running, still smelling like McDonald's. It's a rolling middle finger to planned obsolescence, corporate control, and the idea that problems are too complex for regular people to solve. Every hour it runs is proof that sometimes the best engineering comes from a farmer with a problem and a shop full of tools. You can't buy innovation like that. You can't manufacture it in a corporate R&D lab. It happens in workshops at midnight, in fields at dawn, anywhere someone refuses to accept the way things are and asks, "What if?" Harold Bates asked that question about vegetable oil and farm equipment. His answer changed thousands of lives and scared the hell out of John Deere. That's not just a good story. That's proof that the little guy can still win.